Alright, next we're dealing with form. Essentially what that means, it's taking shape and making it three-dimensional. And we're going to talk about kind of how that is portrayed in a photograph. And really, 3D, three-dimensional, and photographs are portrayed kind of in two ways. The first one is we're going to talk about right now in this video is tonality. And then the next way we see 3D is in something called depth. And we'll talk about that in another video. So let's just focus on 3D shapes and tonality for right now. So here now we can see we took some of those 2D shapes like squares and rectangles, and now we're trying to make them 3D. So let's take a look at some photographs. Here is one I took of a 5-pound sledgehammer, and I did some wood burning into the handle and everything there. So my question to you is, what aspects of this photograph show our eyes that this hammer is three-dimensional? Because right now, if you're looking at it on a screen, you're looking at a 2D image, right? There's no hammer popping out of the screen at you, right? It's a 2D image, but how do we see? How do our eyes see that this hammer is three-dimensional? Well, it has to do with what we call tonality. The bright parts of the image and the dark parts of the image, right? So right now, the way the sun is in this image is off to the left here. So the sun is shining from the left. You can kind of tell by the reflection in the hammer here, but also the reflections in this part of the handle, right? So the reason why we can see this is 3D, because every time the hammer switches angles, for example, right up here is very flat, but then we have these kind of slanted parts of the hammer here, we have the vertical part of the hammer here, and then the under part. We can see that the lighting changes. It's very bright on this part of the hammer, but then as soon as it changes shape, it becomes very dark. And as soon as we get underneath the hammer, it gets even darker because of the shadow. And we can see that again on this part of the handle. Very bright right here, but as we go further around the handle, it gets darker, 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 darker. So because of that, we can see this 2D image as 3D. Here's another example of one of my books and how we can see that the book itself and the background, this log, is three-dimensional. Let's look at the book. We have this part of the book. This is facing the sun pretty directly. But then if you look at the spine, it's a lot darker than the face of the book. And that change in tonality shows us that it's three-dimensional. And even between the face of the book and the spine, you see this little area here that shows you that, this is a hardcover book. It has that little bit of a dent in there. So you can even see just that slightest bit of change between here, which is bright, a little bit darker, a lot darker. And you can even see the change in the tonality of this little dent right here in the cover of the book and the paper. Because it's brighter here, we can see that, someone bent the book a little bit here, or the paper of the book. But if you look down here at the log, look how many shadows there are just in this one little area. That shows, this is a 3D log, right? There's some texture there. But also the fact that this part of the log is in sunlight and this part is in shadow, we can see that this is more of the flat part of the log and this is a vertical part of the log, just because of the shadows, the changes in tones.